the reason that most women have broken up with me is the same reason that most people who don't like me don't like me. Do you know why most people who don't like me don't like me? Because you would agree, in the time that you've known me, I seem to have a pretty polarizing effect on people. By that I mean either very good or very bad. So people either like me a lot, or they fucking hate me. It's usually for the same reason. And that reason is that I do exactly what I say I'm going to do, and I am, and similar to you, bluntly, brutally honest, I think of it as complete transparency. In my mind, I can't be accused of being manipulative or unfair or immoral in any way if I am completely transparent. If I reveal all available information from the very beginning, I say exactly what I'm thinking, exactly what my intentions are, exactly what I'm going to do, then if there's any misinterpretation or misunderstanding, or you have some kind of unrealistic expectation of me, that's entirely on you. It's because you invented something that I never communicated, and you can't accuse me of not telling you something that I told you, right? And people, again, often with women, they love that at first. It's like really refreshing to meet a really honest guy who just says exactly what he's thinking, exactly what his intentions are, exactly how he feels about you at any given stage in the relationship. And then eventually they hate you for it. Because it's like my theory, my working theory anyway, and I address this in the new book, The Romantic Ideal. I talk about like, my working theory is that the type of women I have been romantically involved with, and I think this is a general quality of women, though I certainly don't want to say all women everywhere, but definitely the kind of women I've been romantically involved with, is they can't distinguish very well reality from fantasy. So I say something that sounds fantastical to them, like this hopeless romantic idealist, a fairy tale kind of vision of, I want to be deeply, madly in love with my soulmate and have passionate sex and raise kids and do all these wonderful things together. You bring light and color and beauty in my life, and I feel like these incredible things about you, like the kind of stuff they've been waiting their whole lives to hear a man say about them, right? And if it were coming from another man, it might be deception. It might be some kind of manipulative tactic to make them fall in love. But for me, I say that if I'm feeling it, which does not happen very often. But when it happens, it's real, and I'm very clear this is exactly how I feel about you. This is exactly the effect you have on me. So they hear that, and now it's like, oh my God, is this real? Is this happening? I gotta match this. So they project this fantasy where they're claiming the same things too, except that for them, it's not something they have the emotional temperament or maybe maturity to actually live out as a reality. It's like some fantasy they invented, and it clashes eventually with normal life, real life, which I refer to as the romantic culture war in my book in chapter 6, Watching the Women You Love Die. Gets pretty dark near the end of the book. And so eventually that clashes with what they consider the real world. Like, so there's this fantasy world I've constructed for them, right? And then there's the real world they still have to live in. And so eventually they're kind of caught in between those two worlds, and eventually they have to choose one. And if they choose the real world, which so far every woman I've ever been romantically involved with has done, she views the alternative as a threat now, right? This thing that she was previously so engaged and so excited about, oh my God, I can't believe this is actually happening to me. It's like how dare you? Yeah. It's like you're manipulating me with false promises and beautiful illusions. You're trying to distract me from the real world. When in reality, the opposite is true. What I'm saying is real, and the world they're used to, that they call the real world, is someone else's fantasy that said, no, you have to live this way, and you have to stay safe within what's socially acceptable. It's like waking up from the Matrix, right? People stuck in the Matrix think the Matrix is the real world, and there's this fantastical illusion of waking up to reality and living this exceptional life, and what if the reality is opposite? What if that fantastical life is the reality, and you've accepted an illusion is the real world? I begin the book with a quote on chapter 1. It was, perhaps the state we are in when we fall in love, the feelings that we feel when we are in love, should be considered a normal state. Like perhaps love just shows us who we really are and what we should be, as opposed to the alternative popular interpretation, which is that like love is some grand illusion. Like who we are normally is when we're not in love is who we really are, and when we're falling in love, we're just deluding ourselves, right? It's like being on drugs or something, right? But what if it's the opposite? What if who we are normally is just like an incomplete version of us, and that amazing, magical, fantastical feeling you have when you're in love with what I would call a soulmate is who you really should be, who you can be if you work really hard to maintain that state.
Oh my God, it's sometimes hard to listen to you because you say something and So it's like some words are or some sentences are shocking. So, like, I want to pause it. Like, can you say again this one? Like,
That's why you got to read the book, because you can pause while reading it.
actually, now I want to. But your book,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's why in the conclusion they reach at the end is someone who has repeatedly failed at romance, which is ironically, why would you read a book about a guide to romance from someone who acknowledges that he has failed at romance repeatedly for 35 years? It's because that wherewithal, that endurance has taught me things that most other people will never directly experience, right? And if there's ever any chance at being successful, I think you have to learn these lessons and embody them. And women, particularly, are more sensitive, more fearful. It is harder for them to reach that point, which is why all our romantic fairy tales and parables, like we watched Moulin Rouge, that's one good example. It's always the man makes a proposition to the woman, he invites her into this fantastical world of love and beauty and romance, and the woman is the hesitant, reactive one. She's the one who ultimately has to decide how to respond to this invitation he has extended to her. And the sad ending is that she negates it, she neglects it. She says, no, I can't do that, I'm not brave enough, I'm not strong enough, and ultimately treats him as some kind of villain, some kind of enemy, which we see Satine do briefly. She pretends to in Moulin Rouge, but ultimately she comes around and says, okay, fuck it, I am in love with you, Christian. Fuck everything around me. I agree. You are my soulmate. I'm in love with you, and that's more important than anything else in the world. That's the happy ending. I haven't had the happy ending yet, because the women I tend to fall in love with are cowards, or just young and immature and haven't developed a full sense of identity and individuation. Basically, that's probably what a psychologist would say. Yeah, which one is real, which one is fake? Both are stories, right? Everything we ever think is a story. The world gives you one story and says, this is the real world. And then you introduce a better, higher level story, a fantastical, magical, amazing story. And people say, well, that's just a story. Yeah, well, so is your fucking world. Except my story is better. Your story is dull and gray and predictable. My story is amazing and magical and enlivening. Very often what people call being realistic, realism, just means conventional. Because what's realistic is what's possible. Yeah. Right? What's conventional is just what most people do. So to conflate those two, to act like whatever's conventional or traditional is what's realistic, is basically to say that whatever we have done is the only thing that can be done.
Exactly.
Right? It's very narrow-minded, it's very limited, it's quite arrogant to think that you know everything that's possible.
This fantasy love in some cultures is like, where is my lord who or my husband who come and make that idealism lifestyle that I have in my head, which never my dad did, and I don't want to do myself, but somebody else should do for me. And when I, for example, see you, you're like, fuck off. No,
Yeah, it becomes a threat, right? Even the girl I'm currently dating, the only real criticism she's given of me is that I am too honest. But like she acknowledges it, she says like I give her too much information up front, because most people kind of like cautiously move closer and closer and reveal gradually more intimate details about their past, about their preferences, about their personality and their ambitions. And I'm just an open book. Say, look, this is who I am, this is what I want, this is what I offer, this is what I expect. And she's like, whoa, it's like too much information to take in at once. And she's handling it like a champ to the best of her ability, but I like, for her sake, because she has actually explicitly asked me, like, could you tone it down a bit? Like, could you maybe just make things easier for me? Like, slowly go into the deeper and deeper parts. Like, you don't have to tell me every little detail about every little thing. And I say, okay, but you realize I'm just doing that to be as honest as possible, because I want you to have as much information as possible to make your own informed decisions about everything possible, right? And so, and she's self-aware enough at least to like acknowledge that and say like, okay, like just be a little more protective in how you reveal information to me, so it doesn't kind of shock my nervous system. I say, okay, I'm learning, I'm adjusting.